Hey guys, welcome back to We're Talking Movies. My name's Cade, and today I'm joined by a returning guest, my dad Rich, and for this episode, we're going to be ranking our top three favorite animated Batman movies. All right, hey Dad.
What is going on?
Hey, so when it comes to the animated Batman films, we have a lot that are our favorites, but the top three of ours are these. And for number three, we have Batman Under the Red Hood. When it comes to all three of these movies, I think one of the reasons why these are our favorites is because we love the stories that each of these movies have to tell. And Under the Red Hood definitely has a great story because one of the things that's great is that if you think about it, it's really a great story about Batman and Robin in general. You know, not just Jason Todd, but it's just a great Batman and Robin story because you have Batman and his dynamic with not only Jason Todd, but also you have Dick Grayson as well. It really focuses on Batman as both a teacher and a father figure because you have Dick Grayson, who became Nightwing, who left the clan so that he could become his own man. And then you also have Jason Todd, who he had lost to the Crusades. So I think it does a great job focusing on that sort of aspect of Batman's life.
It gives you like a generational kind of feel, you know what I mean? Because you are spanning basically two generations between Nightwing and Jason, aka Dick Grayson. So, it's pretty cool in that respect that you get to see the torch passed and where it goes.
Yeah, and also when you look at Jason, aka Red Hood, I think what's cool about his whole mission throughout the movie is that if you think about it, it really challenges what Batman stands for. You know, he wants to become a totally different Batman. And he even says that in the movie, when they have their fight, he says, "What bothers you more, that your greatest failure has returned to the fact that I've become a better Batman than you?" And I think that's part of what's interesting is because he even mentions in the movie, you can't stop crime. That's what you've never understood. I can control it. And while he's trying to be a better Batman, that whole mission, controlling crime, but he's also a killer, he sort of challenges Batman's whole mission in that way. And that's really interesting to explore.
Because he crosses the boundaries that Bruce will not. He's willing to do whatever it takes, whereas Batman has a code of ethics,
Yes.
which Jason just doesn't have. He is basically, I will do whatever it takes, no matter what it takes to get the job done. And I feel that for Bruce, when he was young and he was starting out in this, the code was all he had. That's the thing. The code was all he had because he could have went berserk and then he would have been no better than the guys that he was, apprehending and whatever. Whereas Jason's just like, yeah, well, you know what? I'll control it. Or if it doesn't work out, I'll kill him. It's easy.
Yeah, and I think that that's what's interesting about Jason because he's not just another villain trying to destroy Gotham or anything. He actually has depth to his motivation, and I think that's part of what makes him more interesting of a character.
But you really don't get a feel of what he was before he got stuck in the Lazarus pit either. So kind of, you know what I mean? The Lazarus pit, is said to affect you from a mental standpoint. So you don't know that if there was any, let's call them darkening effects of, getting cooked in the Lazarus pit.
Yeah, and also aside from Batman's dynamic and rivalry with Jason, if you think about it, the movie also has so many different layers to it and characters that work really well. Aside from Batman, Nightwing, and the Red Hood, we also have people like we have Joker, who's a big part of the movie. We see Black Mask. We also have Ra's al Ghul as well. The movie has a lot going on in it, yet what's cool about it is that it never feels overcrowded or anything.
No, and the flow was really good too. That was the one thing about them is it didn't ever really get hung up in one area that kind of dragged it down, if you will, and slowed it up. It was good.
And apart from, characters like Joker and Black Mask, one character who I think is utilized really well in the movie is actually Ra's al Ghul. And I know that he isn't in the movie a whole bunch. I still think that he has a really significant role because, he's part of Jason's resurrection by putting him in the Lazarus pit and bringing him back. You know what I like is that his claim was that he wanted to return to Bruce what he had lost after Joker had killed Jason. And what I like about that is, while it's mainly about Batman and Jason's relationship, I think it does a good job staying true to Bruce and Raish's relationship and their dynamic.
Yeah, but return what? Return what? You know what I mean? When he said, "I'm going to return your protege back to you." You returned the beat up, whatever you want to call him version of Jason Todd. It wasn't like you got the original version. You got the Lazarus pit beaten to death by Joker version.
Yeah, but still, what I like about it is it shows you how, the fact that Raish was still willing to do that, I think it shows you how, despite the fact that he and Batman are both enemies, in a way, they're still both respected allies, and at least in Raish's view, because Raish does really respect Batman as well.
Absolutely. There's a total respect factor with them. It's funny. It's gentlemanly. That's really what it is the in the age, in the old age of being a gentleman, like a gentleman could go and try to kill each other. And then if you want to say the 5 o'clock bell rung, they would completely stop what they were doing and they could go have dinner together. You know what I mean? Gentlemanly in that respect. It was really cool, as far as that goes.
Yeah, and I think what's also great is when it comes to exploring Bruce as both a mentor and a father figure, I think what's great is how it explores Bruce feeling, having some sort of feeling of that he failed Jason, because he mentions, when he flies back home after seeing Raish, when he finds out that Jason was resurrected, he really reflects on what happened. And he said, I got Jason killed, my partner, my soldier, my fault. I think that that's definitely something that was interesting to explore with Bruce as well.
Yeah, and you could tell the way they wrote it, he was affected. It wasn't like, hey, the mission's the mission, we got to do what we got to do. He was really, usually that's the way he is. It's like, hey, it's the mission. And you could, he was definitely affected by the situation.
Yeah, and I think what's also nice is when you have a character like Jason Todd, not just as Robin, but also as Red Hood. What I like about him is that he's completely different from Dick Grayson, and they mention that in the movie. He's different than Dick in so many ways. If you look back, he's a lot more reckless. He didn't always do what he was told. He talked back to Bruce a lot, and he was a lot more unstable, obviously. You could see that in the flashbacks when he was Robin.
He just had an edge to him that Dick didn't have. It. Dick was way more compliant, even though he may not always agreed. He was definitely more compliant, whereas Jason was a little more, what's what you say, brazen. Have a little edge to him that obviously Dick didn't have.
Well, I think that that's a great thing to have, not just Jason and Dick. Also, when you have characters like Tim Drake and all the other sidekicks, it's great that they're all different from each other because it keeps challenging Bruce as a mentor as well.
Absolutely. That is 100% true. But it also shows you how patient he is and able to be able to take people from, different, walks of life, yeah, whatever you want to call it, backgrounds, and make it work.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, why don't we move on to our second favorite animated Bat movie, and that is Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. So this is another movie that has a really great story to tell. What's honestly one of my favorite things about the movie is how, if you think about it, we see flashbacks of Batman and his rivalry with Joker, and you also see Terry when he's up against Joker, who's taken over Tim Drake. What I think is great about it is that if you really narrow it down, it's a movie that really explores the whole legacy of Batman and Joker's rivalry as a whole. And also, and we'll get into this later when we talk about our favorite animated Batman movie, but one of the things that's great about Return of the Joker is if you think about it, it really is kind of a mystery story as well. And it really explores the detective side of Batman, which is always one of the best things to explore. In the movie, Terry needs to figure out how the hell is the Joker back, who might be pulling the strings. And he also needs to figure out what happened with the Bat family all those decades prior with Bruce and Barbara and Tim. And what's nice about it is it really gives Terry McGinnis a chance to shine as a detective as well, which he wasn't really as skilled in as Bruce was.
I don't even want to call him a detective. I just want to call an inquisitive kid who is very smart. You can't even go, hey, I'm a detective. He's not even to that point. Obviously he has the physical skills. The suit at this point is basically a technological marvel. It's not even, a suit anymore per se. It's about as close to the Iron Man suit as you're going to get. Basically, it was basically his physical skills teamed with the suit versus with Bruce's intellect. Because I mean, here he is being Bruce's. You don't. He's probably supposed to be in his 80s then, and he, again, he's gone probably. I don't even know what they said. Was it 15 or 20 years or something like that?
20 years, yep.
Yeah, since he had donned the suit. So basically, the whole the Gotham City's turned into a pile of crap because there's nobody to police the city for anymore. Obviously, it's grown. It's the future. All that kind of mixing and blending in with the guy that used to take all that stuff on. They did a really good job blending that movie, and it's so fun to see a kid kind of picking up on it.
Yeah, and I think what's nice about it is a lot of Terry's whole journey is trying to live up to being the Batman that Gotham needs. And he even mentions that in the movie at one point when he's in the Batcave with Ace. He says, if I was the Batman that I was supposed to be, I would have cracked this by now.
The Batman he's supposed to be, he's a freaking high school kid. And it's like, dude, cut it out. You're freaking 17, 18 years old.
Yeah, yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, it's great, and it's great because it's the future. So the kids are probably way more tech savvy, and they will be. because, as the next generations go on, if you're saying that is the future, kids will be way, farther ahead from a technological standpoint, when, as they're introduced to electronics and all that kind of stuff from birth. So, there's definitely some play into that. They did a really good job of melding that in. It's just it was a really good movie to watch, especially, when you're talking about being an adult watching a cartoon.
Yeah, and I think what's also great about, this movie and each of these movies is, yeah, they are cartoons, and people could argue that they're mainly meant for kids, but I would argue that they are also meant for adults too, because they take pretty dark turns and they explore really deep elements as well.
The subject matter is not for kids. I don't think so anyway. I don't feel like it is. It's definitely the plot lines and the story is definitely not for little kids as far as I'm concerned. It's more mature.
Yeah, and I think one thing that the movie explores that is mature is, in Return of the Joker, they bring back the characters of Barbara Gordon and Tim Drake, the older versions of Batgirl and Robin. And what I like is they're not just there for the sake of being there. They both have their own roles to play in the film, and they also add depth to the story. And one thing that I do like is I really like that scene where Terry has his meeting with Tim Drake, and Tim tells him, we all went on with our lives eventually, and you're going to have to eventually as well.
But that's not the difference. Is this Terry is going as Batman? He's not going as the sidekick. That's the difference, though. You can say what you want about it, and but every one of the other ones were sidekicks. They weren't the main character. That's the difference. And I think that I don't want to say it was a miss or anything like that, but I think that's what you can take away from the meeting with Tim Drake and stuff like that is like, look, yeah, that's the difference. I'm not the sidekick. I'm the main guy.
Yeah, and he's also, like we said earlier, a completely different Batman than Bruce as well.
Well, yeah, he's not. I mean, even when you talk about from a physicality size, I mean, he's a kid. He's a kid. I mean, versus Bruce in his prime was probably a 230 pound 6'4" guy. They'd be like, this is Bat Baby. This isn't Batman.
Yeah, and I think that what's also great is, there's that scene at the end where Bruce says to Terry, it isn't Batman that makes you worthwhile, it's the other way around. And I think that that's very true to hear, especially coming from Bruce.
Yep, and because Terry's different. He's not. He doesn't have the same. I don't even want to call it the code part. I don't want to keep jumping back to the code. It's the looking at it also from their age groups. Looking at it from a guy who's 80 versus a kid that's in high school, because you're going to look at the same exact thing a completely different way just because of your life experience.
Yeah, and also one thing that I do really enjoy about the film and also the show Batman Beyond as well is I always enjoyed following the old man Bruce Wayne, especially as he's voiced by Kevin Conroy. Whether you're young Bruce Wayne or prime Bruce Wayne or older Bruce Wayne, Kevin Conroy just always nails that role no matter what he's in. And I've actually always enjoyed him as the older version of Bruce Wayne in Batman Beyond.
No, agreed. Kevin Conroy is killer. I don't know how you, as far as animated, how anyone other than Kevin Conroy. It's. I don't want to say it's a hard watch, but or a listen or whatever, but it definitely does. It feels weird when someone else is, voicing Batman.
Yeah, and I think that in the movie, Return of the Joker, I think what's nice is Bruce also has a pretty satisfying arc in the movie as well, because, we see in the past how his relationship with Robin and Batgirl turned out because of how they eventually went on to do their own thing. And in the movie, while the movie's about Terry hunting down the Joker, if you think about it, it's also kind of about Bruce kind of rebuilding his relationships with those two characters as well. And the ending really shows that when he goes to the hospital to visit Tim and Barbara's there as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a good subplot. And it kind of breaks it up, and it humanizes Bruce instead of just being the man behind the curtain, like Wizard of Oz. I don't want to throw it like that, but with Terry, he's basically the man behind the curtain. He's basically guiding him through.
Yeah, and it's definitely a good thing to explore with the movie. But yeah, why don't we move on to our favorite animated Batman movie of all time, our number one? And which one is that?
Oh, it's Mask of the Phantasm.
Absolutely. Arguably the greatest Batman movie ever made. I got a question. Do you remember the first time that we watched this movie together?
Yeah, you were like one. And it was funny. I watched it again last night as we were prepping for this and talking about it. I watched it again last night just because I wanted to be kind of fresh with it.
Yeah, and I think that when it comes to this movie, I think one of the reasons why it is our favorite, just like what we were talking about with the other two, it's just the movie has such a great story to tell. And that's honestly one of the reasons, I think you might feel the same way. That's one of the reasons why Batman is my favorite comic book character. To me, he has the best stories.
Yeah, the story is great with this because it gives you great flashbacks, great storylines, fantastic. I love that they mix modern and old with the movie. It's probably my favorite part about it, that everybody dresses, like, and the cars and everything is basically like the 40s and 50s, but you get all the modern computers and the thing with the World Fair of Tomorrow and all that stuff, where the Batmobile is basically shown at the World of Tomorrow, whatever the heck that thing was called. It's just melded so well how they mold future and past together to kind of create the weave, if you will.
Yeah, and I think that part of what's great about the story of this movie, if you think about it, like look back, it kind of feels like two different movies in one in a way. Because, you have one side, you have Batman hunting down the Phantasm, and then in the flashbacks, you have Bruce, which is sort of like a reimagining of his origin as you explore his romance with Andrea. And what I like about that is it kind of does feel like two movies in one, but also in the present time where he's going after the Phantasm, that's all Batman's side of the story because we rarely see Bruce Wayne in that side. It's mainly Batman. And in the flashbacks, he doesn't become Batman until the end of his side of that story. So that side is Bruce's story, and the other side is Batman's side. And I think that the story does such a great job, like exploring the sort of duality of Batman and Bruce Wayne as well.
Well, yeah, when she leaves the first time when they're young, after she gives the ring back, and Alfred is sitting with him in that cave room, and he's putting the suit on for the first time, and Alfred, hands him the mask, and he Alfred looks at him and goes like in shock and gets that, shock and awe face because he's like, "Holy shit, dude, you're scary." It was basically because he was like, they're not scared of me when he was talking about when he beat the guys up after the first robbery, when he was running around with his little ski mask on, trying to foil that crime, if you will. So now he's like, they need to be afraid of me. Now they'll be afraid of me. And I didn't even think about that until you were just describing it. And that is so 100% accurate, because it's Bruce basically dealing with the two arcs of his life. Which way am I going? He's making a choice. Am I going between it? Am I going with Andrea, or am I going with the plan? Because remember, they kept talking, the whole movie is talking about that. This isn't the plan. This isn't the plan. And he's, yelling at his parents' gravestone. This isn't the plan. And then when Andrea left, it created the plan. The plan was all that was left was the plan.
Yeah, and I think that actually, when you just talk about that, I think that's actually one of the best scenes in the movie where Bruce goes to visit his parents at their grave and he says to them, I know I made a promise to you guys, but I didn't expect this. I didn't count on being happy. That's actually, when I look back at it, I think it's actually a pretty emotional scene. And I think Kevin Conroy really kills it in his performance in that scene.
Yeah, it's basically like it's probably one of the most important points of the movie, because here he is struggling with I don't want to call it duality, but the duality of his life, and where he's going with it. And he was trying to make a choice, and when he goes to make the choice, it gets made for him when she leaves.
Yeah, and I think also what's great is aside from exploring that whole duality and having those two different arcs play out together, what's also great, and I know we talked about this in the last movie, but also what's great is this is also a detective story. And again, the reason I always bring that up is because that's one of the best things about Batman is the fact that he is a detective. And I would say that this movie, along with the animated series that it's connected to from the 90s, that's an aspect of Batman that both the movie and the show absolutely nailed.
Totally agree. Totally agree. It's the best one. If I could see and dream about any like cartoon or comic book, or this movie would be what I would want to see live action. And it gets everything in and hits it right. It gets the Joker arc in perfect. I mean, it just does such a good job of nailing every piece of it.
Yeah, and that's actually part of the reason why I don't understand why there are some people who, rank this movie and the show as kid friendly. And I can understand why, because it's a cartoon. But again, like we were saying earlier, this movie specifically has a lot of dark and mature themes and elements that it explores.
There's sex, there's smoking,
There's blood.
yeah, there's blood. I mean, it's not, I don't find it kid friendly at all, even though I let my 1 year old watch it, just saying.
And that's the thing. That's why I think the movie is so great because yeah, I get why kids might like it, but it can work for both kids and adults. And I think that's part of what's great about it. But also, getting back to the cast, specifically, I wanted to talk about Kevin Conroy because, yeah, like we were saying earlier, I mean, anytime that I just hear Kevin Conroy voicing the character, whether it's a movie, a show, a game, it's great. I mean, I think you feel the same way because for me, he is Batman to me, just everything about him.
Yeah, it's so true. Him as Batman, fantastic. Dana Delaney as Andrea, great job as far as that goes. Stacy Keach, I think he was actually the Phantasm. Arthur Reeves, Abe Vigoda. I mean, there's a really good cast in here.
And let's not forget Mark Hamill as the Joker.
Oh yeah, forgot about that part. But yeah, just it was, when you think about a voice movie and you're seeing that many, let's just say for the sake of argument, this isn't some Disney movie that probably had a huge budget like a lot of those kinds of movies. But you still had a really good cast.
Yeah, and I think what's great about it is it has a few people from the show. It had Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill and a couple others, but it's a movie that isn't so reliant on so many of Batman's rogues. We have the Joker in the movie, but we also have a new villain, the Phantasm. And if you think about it, it's not so much a story about Batman's whole rogues gallery. It's more of a mob story, which is really fun to explore as well.
Again, what's cool about the whole mob thing is that they did it 50s mob, 60s mob. They didn't do it as modern. So that's the fun part about it is that you get to see all the old cars and all the old guys in the trench coats, and I forget what the hell you call the hat, but the trench coats and the hats, they're all smoking like they did in the 50s. You know what I mean? It was just it's really fun how the way it all pulls together.
And actually, regarding some of the villains that the movie does have, so when you have Andrea, the Phantasm, what's great about her is she has a backstory and a motivation, and she really works as a character. But you know what I kind of like about her? Unlike Batman, she is a vigilante who does kill people, unlike him.
Yeah, no code, no code.
Yeah, no code. And what I like about that, if you think about it in a way, I wonder if she kind of represents what Bruce could have become if he had gone down a darker path as Batman.
You know what? I think you're correct in that, but I think it's not necessarily her. It's just like this is what would happen if you didn't have the code. If you didn't have a set of of rules to live by as far as how you're going to do this. That's the other way is you've got no code.
Yeah, and one other thing, the movie also utilizes Joker really well, also played perfectly by Mark Hamill. But what I do notice is I've kind of noticed this more over time. So if you think about it, this movie kind of gives not a clear origin for the Joker, but a hint of Joker's backstory when you find out that he was a member of the Balestra gang. Obviously, one of the things that people love most about the Joker is the fact that he generally doesn't have a clear origin story. And do you think are you a little more forgiving of that because of how it weaves into the story really well in this movie?
I thought it was one of the best, even though they don't show you how he became the Joker, it's him. You know what I mean? That's the best part about it is that you didn't need the backstory. I mean, would it be cool to know how he, ended up, white skinned with green hair? Sure. But you really didn't need it because everybody's seen the Joker so many times. They already know that he either fell into a vat of chemicals or whatever. So you didn't need it, which was great, is because again, for me, you didn't need it, and it would because then it would have added how much longer would you have had to make the movie to throw the Joker backstory in, and they kept it out, and it kept the movie moving.
Yeah, and I think one other thing I did want to talk about that I do love about this movie and the show as well. Can we just talk about how great the art style and animation in this movie is? Because both this movie and the show just perfectly nail the depiction of both Gotham City and just all the characters. When you watch this movie, and again, the show as well, it almost feels like you're just living inside the pages of a comic book that's brought to life. The creators just nailed that perfectly.
Yeah, it's dark, it's dreary, it's perfect based on the storyline and the way it's done. Because sometimes, like I'll use the Tim Burton Batmans as a thing. They were almost too dreary, too dark. They were classic Tim Burton. You could have put Jack Skeleton in there and it would have felt normal. You know what I mean? In 1989 Batman. Whereas this, it just blends. Everything flows. And I think the way it's done sets the pace for how the whole movie feels.
Yeah, I agree. But before we wrap up, there's actually one thing I wanted to ask you about this movie. So, looking back at Mask of the Phantasm, for you just as a huge Batman fan, would you say that this might be one of your favorite movies of all time?
For Batman, yes. Yes, because it even though it's a cartoon, it just nails the whole embodiment of what you think of when you're watching it and when you're thinking about Batman. When you first find out what it is. I mean, when you go from reading a comic or something like that or seeing a picture, that was probably the perfect flow of I don't even know the right word to use, but whatever, to flow into a movie like that. It's just perfect.
Yeah, I agree. All right, guys, I think that that's the end of this ranking. Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you later.